Hello and welcome back to our series where we are building this people and culture management system. This series is brought to you by Prairie HR Solutions. My name is Jake Finger, Principal Consultant here at Prairie HR Solutions. And in this video, I would like to do some cleanup. We have a functional two-level dashboard here. We can drill down by division and then further drill down by job title. And we did that by essentially just writing some code that got it working, that got it, functional. And now what we need to do is go through and clean that code up. So there's some guiding principles when you create really any solution. And one is it clean? Essentially, does it read essentially like a book? Is it easy to follow? Is it as least complicated as possible? Does it perform well? But then the second piece that, in my opinion, goes overlooked far too often is how is it going to evolve? How is it going to grow? Is it scalable? And that's what we need to take a look at when we start condensing and cleaning up our code is how else are we going to add? Because, we have this box here, these drop down boxes are what filters it. However, how would we incorporate that maybe in the future to include these boxes? So we need to make sure that our code is scalable to the point to where we're not having to do what we did previously and write this massive if statement and then kind of separate the code and then come back and bring it in. It's a lot easier to just simply add to the code that we have simply. So let's actually go back and look at our code here. So our code has quite a bit of duplications. There's a lot of code that kind of does the same exact thing that we can clean up like this. We're going to do this a lot. So we could just create a helper function to do that. And then we can remove some of the repeated pieces here. In fact, this if statement here, we can simply just call separate functions to handle all this same stuff. So let's go ahead and jump right in here. Let's go ahead and take a look at this first code here. So this first code, this get div lock thing, what this does is this checks essentially to see if that div check switch is checked or not. And what we can do is instead of writing all of this and then later on writing all of this again, what we can do initially is simply take this, there we go, and write another if statement to get rid of all this. And you'll see what this if statement is going to do and how it's going to help us. So we can do comp div check switch. And essentially we're just checking to see if it's, checked or not. Because obviously if it's checked, it's going to equal true. And if it's not checked, it's going to be false. So what we can do, if it's true, is simply run another function. And let's call this function lock comp division, because that's really what we're doing. And it is going to pass this over to it, because we're going to do something with that later on. Of course, if I can spell it correctly. And then if it comes back false, which means it's unchecked, then we can run another function, unlock comp division. And my mistake, that's also going to take the division. So once we get done consolidating this, we may actually be able to consolidate it further, but I want to take you through the thought process on how to actually get this done. So we actually don't need this anymore, but I'm going to comment this out because we may need to copy it because we still have to do something with it. We just don't need it right here. So now that should be it for our comp div. It's either checked or it's not checked. If it is, it's going to fire that function. If it's not, it's going to fire that function. So now what we need to do is create those functions. So let's create first our lock comp div, our lock comp division function. And this is obviously going to take this data, and we'll just keep it the same. The same indicator there, the same reference ID. And what we're going to do then is take, let's see, we're going to need this. We're going to need this. And we're going to need this. So we can just take that and put that right here. Okay, good. So that takes care of the lock comp division. Now, the scalability of this is if we need anything else to happen when we lock or when we set that switch to checked, then we can just add it right here in this code and then just refer that function. So now let's do the same exact thing to our unlock comp division, and that's also going to take the comp variable. And what we're going to do here is we are then going to run, see, we're going to need this. We're going to need this. And then we'll need this. And yep, background color disabled. We don't need to set the inner HTML and the all divisions thing, because I think we should do something different with that. I think we should create a helper function to reset all those fields, because we're going to be doing that. We're going to be doing that a lot. What I would like to do though is take this and put it up top, because remember, functions go in order from top to bottom. So instead of, get rid of this, instead of this comp division inner HTML and then setting this and then doing the same thing here, what I would actually like to do would be to create a helper function called, let's call it reset dropdown. And what this reset dropdown is going to need to take, let's create that function here real quick so you can see where I'm going, where my mind's going. So let's call this reset dropdown. And what we're going to do with this reset dropdown is it needs to take some arguments. So the first argument that we need is, what's the element ID that it's going to take? What is that element? So let's just call that the element. And then we're going to need whatever the default value is, right? This little thing. And then we're going to need the default text, this. So let's just call it that. Call it what it is, default value, and then default text. So this is going to take 3 arguments. So when this gets called, we need to make sure that we have 3 different arguments here. So let's look at our unlock division, or our unlock comp division function here. And what we're going to do is let's call our reset dropdown function on our comp division. So what we're going to do is we are going to use our comp division variable, because remember, our comp division variable is already getting that element by ID. So now all we need to do is, let's see, where is it? Right here, is pass it to here, and then we can set it to something. So that's our element. And then we need our default value. Well, our default value is going to be all divisions right here. Let's go all divisions. And then we need our default text, and our default text, okay, that shouldn't be, let me see, comp division, all divisions, all jobs. It's interesting. That shouldn't be all jobs. That should be all divisions. All divisions. Okay, so we have that. So now let's create the other one for the job field. And this one is going to be jobs DD. And the text for this one is going to be all, or the value is going to be all jobs. And then the inner text is going to be all jobs. So we can actually now get rid of, that takes care of this once we pass it down here anyway. Okay, so let's work on this now. This function reset drop down. So we have our element, we have our default value, and we have our default text. So now what we can do is set our inner HTML for our element. So let's do element inner HTML. Now every time this is called, it's going to be something different, which is fine because we're going to call it for the comp division, then we're going to call it again for the jobs DD. And it's just going to grab that element and then set that stuff there, the inner HTML. So our inner HTML is going to be an option, and it's going to be a value. Now this value needs to equal whatever this default value is. So if you remember our literal strings, we use a $sign and a curly bracket to pass essentially this default value through. And then we need to do this selected piece. So we need a space and selected, which is how, let's make sure that this is how it looks. Okay, so we need a drop down selected, just like that. So we need our selected to be that default text. Okay, and then we're going to need an option here, just like that. Okay, good. So now that should take care of that. Well, actually, this should not be default text because it's either the default text or the default value. So this should also be default value. So that way, if we ever decide to pass just one like that, then it will also, if there isn't any default text here, then it'll just use the value for that, which we could actually do. But we'll leave it like that. That gives us the ability to just have the value and the text the same thing. So we'll leave it for that for now. Okay, and then we just in that. Okay, good. And then let's see, our div filter locked is right here, but what we need to do is we need to ensure that we run something else here. So we need to run this after our reset, because once we reset everything, then we need to repopulate the drop downs. And then after the drop downs are repopulated, we actually need to fire off our initial fetch data and draw chart to start the whole chart thing over again. Okay, but this actually shouldn't go here. Now that I'm thinking about it, this should go not on our reset. This should go right here in our unlock. Right here. Okay, so now that should take care of all of that. So now I can get rid of that. Okay, good. So now if it's checked, it's going to do this. If it's unchecked, going to do this. And then we've set a couple reset drop downs here. Reset filter here. And what we can actually end up using this for is some of these later on. Let's see how that goes. Okay, and then we got the div filter lock. See, I think, I'm not sure what we can do with this really quite yet. This div filter lock kind of kicks off this filter DD data, which updates our filter. Based on that, I mean, we could, let's leave this for now for scalability. We'll have to look at that, because if we ever wanted to add it, then we can just send the data here. Let's move on to this pop filter data. And let's see, we're going to keep, we don't need this console here. We're going to keep this. And instead of this, we want to reset drop down. And our reset drop down this time is going to be our jobs DD. And this can be all jobs. Actually, we could just leave it like that because we have that or. So it's just going to use this to be the same thing. And then once we get that done, then we're going to do our filter data and create everything. Okay, that's good. So now we have our get comp filter. So we have that. We could probably change these to constants. I'll do that a little bit later. That, and then we have our comp filter, event ID. And then this, let's make sure that if there's anything that we can do here. Yes, because if you think about this true and gray, and then this div value, this is already happening up here, right here. So all we need to do is just call this lock comp division. So let's take this and call our lock comp division. And what we're going to pass through that is comp division again, which we have the comp division stored right here. Maybe what we can do is go through after we get this done and pull this into a global variable to just be done with it and not have to repeat yourself here either. So we're going to run that. That's going to take care of those pieces. Then we're going to run our if statement. If it equals comp jobs, then we're going to kind of do this offshoot piece, which is right here. And then if we want to do something else, what we can do is handle, instead of doing this. So let's see here. It's going to fire this. And then we really don't need this because it's just not going to do anything. But then we have this else. And then, you know, let's break up. Because it's a separate stream, this is based on if that box is not checked. So this is a different stream. So let's put this in a different function. And so let's just push this down here. We'll go down here and get rid of that thing. And then that is going to be the else. We're going to need another one to close out that function. Won't need that. So let's actually just put this in another function, and let's call this function handle drop down reset. And then this can take a filter reset, a comp filter reset, or a comp filter select, not a reset. I'm sorry, don't know what I was thinking. And what this comp filter select is going to be is what's ever coming through. It's going to be this event target ID. Right? That's what we're going to be passing. We need to pass this, or we can just simply just pass this event target ID, either or. So let's actually call this handle drop down reset. We want to pass our event. Wow, I spelled that all wrong. Target ID. And then this is going to be here. And let's close this out right here. Because now it should be in its own function to where we can simply just pass whatever event target ID is that comes through it. So I think it should just be, we could just use this comp filter. Let's leave it this way, and then we'll add the comp filter later. Because it may not always be comp filter. It may be something else. So let's just leave it like this for now. And then, okay, so our handle drop down reset. Let's see if there's anything else that we can do here. We need our map. We don't need to call our spinner control here yet. We can call it a little bit later on. We're going to need to do our reset values. We are going to then need to do our comp filter select, which is right here. And that's what's getting passed. So we're just essentially calling it what we already have. And then our filter index. That's interesting. I'm looking at these comp. Okay, our filter index is good. Our filter value is good. We don't need that anymore because we're already passing that to here. And then we need to handle all selections. Actually, what we can do is take this, move it away from here because we need to reset that. And we can add it here, and then we can run our if statement. Because this reset value goes through all of these. Those handle, right now, these handle just those two, the comp division and the comp jobs. This handles everything. So we may incorporate that into the future. Yeah, might incorporate that, pull it up. But let's just take it one step at a time here so we can make sure that we get it right the first time. Okay, if it's undefined, yep, if filtered value starts with all. So if it starts with all of these, then it's simply just going to reset that entire chart. And if it doesn't start with all, then it's going to run this piece. And then that's going to get that comp filter data, filter index, filter value. Okay, interesting. So let's actually go back here and see how this works. Now we may need the one thing that we haven't done was essentially user tested this, so we may come up with some things that we need to fix, but at least it's a little cleaner now. So let's refresh our code. And if we do human resources, should update. Yep. And then if we were to lock this, we should only have, okay, default text or default value. Okay, so we're going to have to fix that. Human resource generalist, and then it resets to that. So we'll have to look at that. Let's make sure it changes here though. Okay, the director, so it's updating it. It's just going back to that default value. So we'll look at that, and then full stack development. So none of these should do anything because we have not given it anything to do with this checkbox. So what we could essentially do is we could either lock these out or incorporate them. But let's take care of this default text, default value thing. Let's unclick it and see what it does. Yep. Okay, so it's a syntax error somewhere. If we do that, this should populate new. Default text, default text. Okay, yep. So something is a little bit off there. So let's go see. So we have element HTML. And then our option here. So let's see what is happening here. Comps, jobs. Did I make that mistake again? Yep, I did. Okay, so this is not a single quotation mark. This is a literal, it's the back hash. Like so. And actually, since we're doing this, we don't really need to pass that. Let's just see if that works. Well, let's see if it works first this way. And then we'll try it again. Because that looks better. Because now this should not be read out. Okay, good. So let's try that. Come over here and refresh it. Okay, so let's check. Let's do sales. We haven't played with sales for a while. Okay, so here's sales. So let's lock this. Okay, so it's undefined. I'm not sure why it's undefined, but we'll see why. Okay, that's undefined. Okay, so let's now come back here. Okay, interesting. So let's go see why this is undefined. So default text, jobs DD. It's going to be passed. Select default text. Let's actually get rid of this. Oops, maybe not like that. Let's get rid of that and give it something to run on here. Oh, that's the reason why it's undefined. Because we took out our or default value. Boom, boom. Just in case it's out. Now let's take this out and see if that fixes it. Okay, let's try that. So let's refresh this and it should be human resources. should have everything. Yep, changed. Okay, so now let's put this back on, say like operations or sales. We were on sales. All jobs, it's not undefined. Or, well, let's trip it this time. There you go. Okay, all jobs, good. And we have our jobs there. Okay, good. And it looks like it's going back. We can fix that though. We don't need to reset it once it goes back. Okay, but that works. And now let's unclick it and see what happens. Okay, it loads and it goes back here. We have everything, and then this should be completely clean and done. Okay, good. Demographics still work. Okay, good. So now we have that done. So now let's look at what happens when we lock it. So we have this division filter lock thing. And this division filter lock is, it looks like it's resetting this. So when we unlock this, it is then resetting this job's drop down to all jobs. And then if it's locked, it's then doing this division filter lock thingy. And I think the reason, I'll have to look at this, but I think the reason why it's doing that is actually this. Populating, then fetching the draw chart. So we'll have to take care of that. We'll have to take care of that later on. It'll be simply just going through and figuring out exactly when that this filter thing gets, tripped. We will have to go through and actually change this to where it's not actually being included in the alt job. So we'll do that in a future video. And then, yeah, but this is a condensed version of what it is that we have. And we're actually able to build onto this if we needed to, like we created a different switch or whatnot. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it was informative. If it was, please hit that subscribe button and look forward for the next videos where we further enhance this. We'll probably use another level of filtering. But until next time, please take care.